If the power went off right now, would your home actually stay on? Because for a lot of people with battery storage, the answer is actually no. In this video, I'm going to explain properly how backup power actually works. I'll show you the difference between UPS, EPS and backup circuits. We'll talk about why inverter size matters more than battery capacity and why some systems switch over seamlessly while others make the lights flicker or don't even work at all. And if you've ever been told this gives you whole home backup, you're going to want to watch to the end of the video. So first of all, what does backup power actually mean? Well, to have backup power, you're going to need three things. Usually a power source, either batteries, a generator, and or a solar array. You're also going to need an inverter for the batteries and solar to convert the DC power to the AC that is used within your home or business. And vitally, you're going to need some kind of safe changeover system to isolate your property from the grid in the event that you switch over to backup power. Now, crucially, some battery storage systems are missing one of these elements and therefore they will not work in backup mode, and we'll talk about that a bit more later in the video. Now, when it comes to battery backup systems, there are multiple different options. You've got UPS, which stands for uninterrupted power supply, and that basically allows seamless switchover without any lights flickering, without any kind of blip in the sine wave at all, which means that all of your essential loads and your important things that you want to keep going, like your electronic devices, particularly your router for your internet, maybe you've got expensive servers and things like that in the house, or maybe sensitive medical equipment, all of it stays working. It doesn't miss a beat during that switchover period. That is what we call UPS, or uninterrupted power supply. Now that is contrasted to an EPS system, which stands for emergency power supply. Unlike UPS, the switchover is not instantaneous. It usually takes a few milliseconds. For example, the Tesla Powerwall system can range from 20 to 50 milliseconds switchover time. In reality, that means you do have backup power, but that little flicker in the sine wave can cause electronic devices to trip. It can cause a visible flicker in the lights when you switch over to backup power. So unlike UPS, although it gives you emergency power supply and the switchover is pretty quick, it's not going to keep everything running seamlessly, and you may find that certain devices trip out and restart during that backup switchover period. Now, we've made loads of videos over the last few years about different battery storage systems, and as technology evolves, we try to keep our viewers and ourselves up to date with all of the latest technology on the market, so you know what the possibilities are. And that means that if you like and subscribe to this video, you're more likely to be kept up to date with the latest videos from our channel, and it really helps us. It supports us in our mission to grow and reach more people. So thank you for hitting the subscribe button, and thank you for liking this video if you have enjoyed it so far. Now, the third type of backup system that we come across quite frequently is what we call backup circuits, or emergency circuits. This is where an inverter has a set of terminals that are designed for backup, but usually the amount of power that those backup terminals can supply is quite minimal, maybe 3 kilowatts, 16 amps, something like that. So the idea behind those is that you can wire from the inverter to a separate backup consumer unit and just put your essential circuits running off of that backup consumer unit, or maybe just run a couple of sockets off of those backup terminals. It's not going to give you full house backup, which means that only those essential circuits will run in the event of a power cut, but it can be a cheaper option or suitable for people who've got quite a small inverter. Somebody who just wants to have a backup socket, for example, to maybe run the fridge in an emergency if they do have a power cut, and maybe when power cuts are rare, a backup circuit type of situation can be good. Although it still requires a backup earthing system, which can be quite expensive, so it's still not going to be super cheap, and sometimes for a little bit extra it's worth paying to get a full home backup system if your battery system enables it. Now, in terms of UPSs, there are various types of UPSs, and the most common type of UPS you might be familiar with is the kind of UPS that businesses maybe have under the desk that they plug the computer into. It's got a small bank of batteries, not a huge amount of storage capacity, but enough to run a few devices that are quite important. But in this video, we're really talking about stationary battery storage when it comes to homes or businesses, the kind of battery storage that you can use to charge up with your solar energy or charge up from the grid. And we're talking about big systems here, systems that are capable of running the entire building during a power outage. Now, it's very rare for a home or business battery system to be classified as true UPS. However, there are systems that are very, very close. For example, the 𝐒ِG Energy system with the gateway, we fit loads of them in people's homes and businesses, and the switchover time is sub 0 milliseconds, which essentially means that it's so quick you don't see a blip in the sine wave, you don't see the lights flicker, and it's as close as you can get to UPS without being able to truly call it UPS. It's great because a UPS system on that scale would be extremely expensive and probably only capable of running for a very short amount of time. Whereas a large 𝐒ِG Energy battery storage system is capable of running your entire building for hours or even days, and with the switchover time being so short, for most businesses, it's absolutely adequate. For example, our HQ here runs off a system exactly like that, and we don't see any interruption at all when we've got a power cut. So for us, it's the perfect balance between UPS and EPS because you get the best of both worlds. Now, a lot of systems have the capability to be run in whole home backup mode, but they need a gateway. And that is crucial. Without that gateway that cuts you off from the grid and switches you over to battery storage, your normal home battery system simply will not work if there's a power cut, because all home battery inverters are what we call grid tied, and they're designed to cut off if the grid cuts out. Now, this is for safety reasons, because imagine if the grid was deliberately cut off because they needed to work on the power lines outside your house. Guess what? What you don't want, or what the people working on the grid don't want, is the power from your battery system feeding back into the grid. And although they think the grid power lines are dead, they're actually live because your battery system is back feeding. So with every backup battery system, what you'll find is one key theme, which is really important. It has an automatic or manual switch over system that cuts you off from the grid, physically disconnecting your property from the grid so that none of that battery power can feed back into the grid during a grid outage. And that is a really important safety feature that all of these systems will have in common. Now, a lot of people think they're buying a battery backup system when they're actually just buying a battery storage system, because without that gateway, even though you may have a system that is capable of running in backup mode, it simply won't. And that's a really key lesson to take from this video, is if you're looking for battery backup, it's different from battery storage, and you need to make sure that your installer knows that you do want backup power as part of the battery storage package that you're going to purchase. Now, if you're thinking about getting backup power, you need to know what level of backup power you need. And that's because even if you've got a gateway and you've got a system that can switch over instantaneously in the scenario where the grid power cuts out, guess what? Your system may still not work for you if your inverter is not sized correctly. This is where most battery systems fail, and it has nothing to do with battery capacity. What do I mean by that? Well, no matter how big your battery storage system is, no matter how many kilowatt hours of storage, there is a charge and discharge rate to every battery storage system. And that's usually limited by two things. One is the amount of battery capacity in kilowatt hours, and the battery's C rating. Now, the C rating is the charge and discharge rate. Most batteries have a C rating of either half or 1C. Now, to keep this really simple, that means that a 10 kilowatt hour battery that is rated at half C can charge and discharge at 5 kilowatts. A 10 kilowatt hour battery that has a rating of 1C can charge and discharge at 10 kilowatts. Now, that's important because if your house is pulling a load of power when the grid goes down, guess what? If your inverter can't output the amount of power that your home needs at that given moment, the inverter will literally trip out because it's overloaded by all of the power that's being pulled in the house. It will trip out and you'll lose power completely. Now, the other element to this is the inverter size. So no matter how many batteries you have, how much capacity you have and what the C rating is, the inverter is the bottleneck. The inverter is the limiting factor. So if you've got, say, 100 kilowatt hours of battery storage with a 1C rating, that doesn't necessarily mean that your battery system can charge and discharge at 100 kilowatts. It will be limited by whatever inverter is sitting there at the top of the stack of batteries, or however your battery system is configured. That inverter is going to be the limiting factor in terms of how fast you can charge the batteries up, but also how fast they can discharge. In other words, how much power they can output during a grid outage. What you may need to do in a backup situation is turn off some heavy appliances. For example, imagine that you're running the oven and the kettle and the washing machine. That can easily rack up to 7, 8, 10 kilowatts of power being consumed at any given time. And if you've only got a 6 kilowatt inverter, that's going to trip out the system and you're going to lose all power. So what you might want to do is turn off a couple of appliances, and then the inverter should kick in and start to give you power again. But the ideal, and this is one of the main points of this video, the ideal is to get the system designed properly to start with, which means you need to know what level of loads have you got running in your house at any given time. What is your maximum demand? What's the worst case scenario? Maybe when you've got the hot tub running and the sauna going and the oven and the toaster and the air fryer. Maybe it's not very often, but ideally you want to size the system so that it can cope with your maximum demand. Now, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you've got a battery system but you've found that it doesn't work when the power cuts off from the grid, or you do have a backup battery system but actually your inverter hasn't been sized correctly and it cuts out when you switch into backup mode, leave us your stories in the comments below, because I've heard quite a few people who've been in this situation where they thought they had backup power but actually they didn't because the system was not designed correctly. I can guarantee you're not alone. So let's talk about kilowatts versus kilowatt hours for a moment, because this confuses a lot of people. Kilowatts is instantaneous power, what you can pull from your inverter at any given time. So to give you an example, a kettle is usually rated at about 1 kilowatt. A kilowatt just means 1,000 watts. So if you've got a 12 kilowatt inverter, you could have 12 kettles running at the same time and your system would still continue in backup mode. Now, kilowatt hours is a measurement of energy, and what that means is a kilowatt for 1 hour. In other words, if you were boiling the kettle and you boil the kettle continuously for 1 hour, that kettle will have used 1 kilowatt hour of energy. The storage capacity of your battery is rated in kilowatt hours. So for example, a 12 kilowatt hour battery, you could pull 1 kilowatt from it for 12 hours before it is completely at 0%, or you could pull 12 kilowatts from it for 1 hour before it's at 0%. Why is that so important? Well, because the capacity is going to limit how long you can survive in an off-grid scenario. So for example, if you're in a situation where you want to be able to run your property in backup mode for 24 hours, what information do you need to know? Well, you need to know how much power your house uses, or how much energy your house uses within a given 24-hour period. Now, usually in modern homes, that's quite easy to do because we've all got smart meters and we're tracking exactly how much power we use every day. And you can take an average of the month, maybe take 30 days worth of energy usage, divide it by 30, and then see what your average day looks like. Maybe you want to size it a bit more to cover rare days where you might be using more power, or if you're on a tight budget, maybe size it a little bit lower. But the idea is to try and have enough capacity in your battery to be able to last 24 hours if that's what you're looking for. But the whole point is knowing, okay, how much power do you use in 4 hours, for example, and then sizing the battery capacity to cover that amount of power. So that capacity in kilowatt hours tied in with the kilowatt rating of the inverter and the charge and discharge rate of the battery system, the two things are paired together to design the perfect battery backup system for your home or business. Now, typical heavy loads that you might have in your home are your electric appliances that heat things. Anything that heats in general takes a lot of power. So your kettle, your oven, your hob, your washing machine, your tumble dryer, your dishwasher, all of these have heating elements in them which consume quite a lot of energy. Other things like heat pumps are very heavy energy users and generally can drain a battery quite quickly. So if you've got anything that heats in general, that's something that you want to factor in to your storage capacity estimate so that you know that you've got enough power to cover all of those things, particularly in winter when you might be using your heat pump more or other things that tend to do heating. If you're just looking to keep your fridge or your lights or your internet going, those things use a lot less power and therefore a lot less energy. So something like an EPS system that just has backup circuits with the socket that feeds your fridge or the socket that feeds your router or a couple of lighting circuits wired into it can be an option if you're on more of a tight budget and you're looking for a system that just keeps those basic things running, but you're not looking to heat your home or run all of your heavy appliances. Now, there's another element to backup systems which we really need to talk about, and that is generators. Obviously, if you've got a battery backup system, that battery only has a certain amount of capacity and life, and therefore, at some point, once your battery drains to zero, your power will cut out. Now, for some people, that's not a big deal because they rarely get power cuts, and if they do, they don't last very long. But for other people, particularly properties that are out in the sticks and have overhead supplies, sometimes power outages could last for several days. And if you're reliant on electricity to heat your home, to run all of the important things that you need to survive, you really need a battery backup system that's going to last for several days, but that can be very expensive. So that's where a generator can really supplement a battery storage system. And we've installed a few of these systems where the customer's got a decent sized battery system and then they've complemented it with a generator. What that means is the battery system might be designed to last 24 hours. And then when it gets to a very low state of charge, the generator is set to automatically kick in, provide power to charge those batteries back up and run the house in the meantime. And then once the batteries are charged back up, the generator will cut out and the batteries will continue to run the property. And essentially that means that you can run the property infinitely off grid if you want to. Even if you had a 10-day, a 14-day, a whole month power outage, your generator combined with your battery system is enough that as long as you've got fuel for the generator, you can keep running your entire property. And these kind of systems work really, really well. But they're generally for properties that are larger, that have quite a sensitive power supply, and where having that level of backup power is really important for our customers. Now, a really important question we need to talk about is, do you actually need battery backup? Because when we get phone calls from customers asking us about battery systems, they often want backup power, but then when I ask them how often do you get power cuts, they say, oh well, I've not had a power cut in the last 10 years. So the question is, well, how much do you value the peace of mind of having a battery backup system? Because in reality, for a lot of homes in the UK, power cuts are very rare at the moment. So you may not need that system for a long time, or if you do, it might not be very frequent. However, there's a caveat here. As we know, the grid is getting older, the condition of the grid is worsening. On top of that, the amount of electrical loads is only increasing as more and more electrical systems come online with batteries, EVs, heat pumps, data centers, all consuming tons of power. The strain on the grid is only going to get more, and some people think that the people who look after the grid, maintain the grid and upgrade the grid are not going to be able to keep up with the pace of how much the demand is increasing. Now, if you're a homeowner, things to think about are, do you work from home? How much would it interrupt your day if you had a power cut? Do you have important medical devices? Some people have patients that they care for in their homes, family members that have got important medical devices, and they need to keep those things going. That can be an important factor too. How worried are you about the state of the grid? Well, if it helps you sleep better at night and feel more peaceful in your mind that you've got battery backup, that can be worth a lot too. And of course, if you're running a business, downtime can cost an absolute fortune. So having battery backup like we do here at Artisan HQ means that if the power from the grid cuts out, we know that our business is not going to be interrupted. We can continue working. We don't have to send everyone home but still pay them. We don't have to stop working for our customers and therefore stop earning money. So for us, it's a really vital part of our business infrastructure. It's all about risk management, really. How much is the potential risk to your home or business? What is the cost of interruption if you do have a power cut? And how much do you value that benefit of having uninterrupted power to your home or business? So what are the key things that I want to share with you about battery backup? Well, number one is, just because your batteries are full doesn't mean you've got backup power. Make sure, if you need backup power, that your system is designed to give you that. And usually that's by means of a gateway or some kind of backup circuits. But on top of that, you want to make sure that your inverter capacity and the discharge rate of your battery system is such that it can cover the peak loads in your house during a power outage. So if you're considering a battery backup system for your home or business, I hope this video has been of help to you. And of course, if you'd like more help and a quote from us, there'll be a link in the description below and the pinned comment where you can get a quote from Artisan Electrics to install your system. But either way, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and share the video out with somebody else who might enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next one.